Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. This next question comes from our friend Robert, who says, "Hey Ramsey, thank you for the stream of interesting videos during these bleak times." You're welcome, Robert. Thanks for watching. I started with judo a few years ago, fell in love with it, and also started watching UFC matches with a friend of mine. Recently, I watched a women's fight where a striker lost to a BBJ practitioner. Is that like a common autocorrect thing? Because I'm seeing a lot of people write BBJ when they mean BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, two J's. But I'm thinking that must be an autocorrect thing. My phone always does weird things to autocorrect martial arts terms, MMA terms, jiu-jitsu terms. For example, if I try writing jiu-jitsu, it always writes Joy Horsey in the autocorrect thing, or Ju-Hutus, like Hutus. Is that even a word in English? I don't know. So I'm guessing some people have this autocorrect thing that writes in BBJ, since that is so incredibly common. Similar to how people would often write a women, plural, a women. And yeah, I just assume there are some faulty computer systems out there trying to correct your language, or perhaps deliberately incorrect it for you. But getting back to Robert's question. So we saw this match between a striker and a grappler. The striker would land a few shots during the first seconds of the round, but would end up with her back against the cage. There she would get clinched, taken down, and held there for the rest of the round. She lost the match by rear naked choke in the last 10 seconds of the last round, but would have lost anyway by decision. Even though her bio said that she was well versed in BJJ. Interesting. There, it's spelled correctly, BJJ, not BBJ. And apparently knew how to pull and retain guard, it seemed to me. It seemed to me that she missed some obvious chances to attack with a Kimura or guillotine. Do you think that I'm the armchair quarterback here and talk big while having no clue, or could there actually be some kind of truth to it? It was the UFC fight night from the 20th of June, Courtney Casey versus Jillian Robertson. I didn't see that fight. I tried to look it up before answering this question, but yeah, it hasn't been published by the UFC on YouTube, so yeah, having a hard time finding that one. So I didn't see it. Okay, I understand what you're saying. There are lots of fights like this where it seems like it should go down differently, and it's very tempting to be the armchair quarterback saying, yeah, she totally could have got that move right there. She totally could have done this or that or the other. Hindsight is 20/20, as the old saying goes, but also a third-person perspective is radically different from a first-person perspective. When we are watching from the sidelines, we are able to think cognitively. We're able to think in a very different way than what's going on in an actual fight, where you're seeing it from a first-person perspective, where you are experiencing all of the combat stress and all of the damage and all of the punches to your very soul. It's a different thing. Surprise. Now, I can appreciate your question. I absolutely can, Robert. So, not judging you, not saying, boo, hiss, you shouldn't have an opinion about what fighters could have possibly done. Yeah, it could have gone a million different ways, but that's the way it went. But there are so many incidentals in a fight. Man, the first thing I think of, things I've experienced in fights, severe dehydration. Man, fighters deal with that all the time. And severe dehydration from cutting weight, and a lot of times these fighters, especially in women's weight classes, because there are relatively few women's weight classes. So if you're a bigger woman, the only way to fight in the UFC right now is to cut a tremendous amount of weight. If you want to see an example of this, Cyborg, when she was getting ready to fight in the UFC, what was the weight division? Was it 145, something like that? She was walking around like 165, 170. And you can see this video of her just struggling and suffering to cut down that much weight. And she is crying, you know, this courageous, brave, strong woman just bawling like a baby about cutting this weight, because it's killing her. Cutting that type of weight is deadly. And I've done it, I understand. I've done weight cuts that extreme, actually more extreme. And it almost killed me. And the effect it had on my performance, man, put anybody through that type of ordeal and they are not going to be the same fighter afterward. When you take some damage, now I didn't see this fight, but you mentioned that she got mauled a little bit, got pushed up against the cage, got squished a little bit, got some pressure on her. Yeah, nobody fights like they roll in the gym after that. Had a conversation with a good friend of mine. He's a professional MMA fighter. We were talking about rolling with jiu-jitsu black belts and sparring with jiu-jitsu black belts and the difference between those two situations. Now, there are different types of black belts. There are black belts, and then there are black belts, and then there are black belts, man, in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. There are guys who have put in their time and they know the techniques and all that, but they're not the greatest competitors. And then there are guys who are absolute beasts wearing the same color of belt. And this is true in most martial arts. It's just in jiu-jitsu there's better quality control than most other martial arts. Since it's a live art, there's always sparring, there's always rolling. And so people tend to be a lot more honest about what those belt ranks represent. But if you have a jiu-jitsu black belt who has never grappled with strikes before, and then you do some MMA sparring with him, if he doesn't know how to box, if he hasn't done any kickboxing, if he's never experienced ground and pound before, suddenly you see that black belt turn into something else, and it's like, whoa, how is it that you have such an incredibly high level of technique in this one discipline, but as soon as you throw a new variable in there, it's like throwing a wrench into the engine and it all just comes apart. And it doesn't take a tremendous amount of experience doing some MMA sparring before you can iron that out, but it does take consistent work. And obviously the strategies change. The strategies in sport jiu-jitsu are, not surprisingly, they are different than the strategies in implementing a submission grappling game plan in the sport of mixed martial arts. They are different. We never understand what another person is going to. We can't. We can try to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, but we never really understand the struggles another human being is going through. You can look out there in the world and see somebody who seems like, oh man, that guy has it so good. I wish I was like him. That's why coveting is such a dangerous sin, my friends, because one, it's selling yourself short, and two, it is refusing to empathize, to experience empathy with another human being, a refusal to even attempt to understand what they are going through. So everybody bears their own burden that you cannot see. Everybody. And it's usually invisible to you. There are people out there walking around in tremendous pain 24/7. And you can't see it. And you might look at them and think, that guy has it made. And the dude is suffering constantly. And his life is a living hell. You don't know. You can't know. So, it's fun to be a armchair quarterback. It's fun, yeah, to sit there and watch fights with your friends and say, yeah, they should have done this, they should have done that. And absolutely, absolutely. So I'm working as a strength and conditioning coach for a high-level boxer right now. WBA Women's Asia champion in boxing. And she's awesome. She's great. So doing some strength and conditioning stuff with her. And I came in the gym and she had just finished a sparring session. And they asked me, hey, what do you think of this? And I said, well, let me see the video. So I look at the video and I offer some insights. And it's very interesting. This athlete of mine that I'm doing strength and conditioning with, She is so open and so receptive to strength and conditioning advice and training. And when I say jump, she literally jumps, right? But I was not the one who coached her to that WBA title as far as boxing technique goes. And so when I dropped my 2 cents, okay, when this happened, this is what I would recommend. This is the course that I would recommend. Use this, do more of that, and so on. I could see the gears were turning differently. It was kind of like, yeah, okay. Just kind of blew it off. Because the respect wasn't there. The respect wasn't there because I had not worked with her in that capacity as of yet. So she was willing to accept me as, okay, this is the strength and conditioning guy, not the boxing guy. It was sound advice. It was very good advice I was giving. 100% I backed that advice up. But again, we have to be ready on all levels to accept advice, because ultimately the only voice we listen to is our own. And so my athlete, again, her voice is telling her, this guy can help me become stronger and faster and more athletic. And that voice is also telling her, my coaches who helped coach me as far as boxing to get that title, those guys I can listen to, those guys I can trust as far as boxing technique goes. And that's not the worst idea. If it works, if it gives you the result you want, that's the right way, right? If it's not broken, why fix it, right? Okay. But what does that have to do with being an armchair quarterback? So we watch these fights, these professional fighters, these UFC fighters going through all these struggles and all this hyper tension that you just don't really understand unless you've actually stepped foot in a fight cage before in front of a crowd. It's a different thing. It is so incredibly different from what happens in the gym that it's almost absurd in a way that we actually train in the gym. I mean, we need to. We absolutely need to, because there's no other way to go about it. But we definitely should update how we train for fights, fight psychology especially. So was there an opening for a guillotine or a Kimura? There very well could have been. From your perspective, you might have seen a glaring opening that she did not, because she was experiencing things that you were not. She was the one getting punched in the face, you were not. She was the one under pressure, you were not. And that's okay. So if you were a coach, right, if you were this woman's coach, you would see this performance, and then after the fight, you would review the video, you would watch it, you would obviously bring up the mistakes and how to fix them. You might point out there is an opportunity for a guillotine here, there's an opportunity for a Kimura here, so let's run through some of those scenarios, and hopefully the next time we find ourselves in this situation, then we can pull off that Kimura and that guillotine. But at the same time, you have to approach these situations carefully and tactfully. Because even in a coach-athlete relationship, again, I'm the trusted strength and conditioning coach of this boxing champion. But she wasn't ready to listen to technical boxing advice from me at that point. And that's okay, right? So, you are in a completely different type of relationship with these athletes that you're watching. It's not even a coach-athlete relationship. It is an audience-performer relationship. And audiences often give feedback back to performers. They rarely ever hear it or pay attention to it. Sometimes that is boo, hiss, you suck. A lot of it's, bravo, you gave it the old college try. I really admire you. You're very brave. But for performers, what really sticks is those negative things. You can have 100 beautiful, wonderful comments, heartfelt comments saying, I love what you did, you changed my life. This is coming from a YouTuber perspective, and I get these comments all the time. You changed my life, you saved my life, this thing you said caused me to have this positive experience in my life, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I got in shape, and I started training, and I won some fights, and I'm much happier than I was before. And I get those comments all the time, and those are great, and I love those, and man, those just make my day. And at the same time, when I read through my YouTube comments, then I get one like, you suck, you're the worst, meh. What am I thinking about for the next 5 minutes or so? The little angry guy that I just want to squish, but I never will, because he'll never show up at the gym. And that's annoying. That's very annoying, because nobody likes being told that they're wrong. You don't like it, which is why some of the things I'm saying in this video may be rubbing you the wrong way. Because essentially I'm saying, Robert, you're wrong. I'm trying to put it in a diplomatic way. You're wrong because you don't have the full picture. I'm trying to help you understand it from a fighter's point of view, as opposed to simply the audience point of view. But nobody likes being told they're wrong, especially by somebody whose voice doesn't seem to echo our voice. Unfortunately, because a lot of people out there, man, need to be set straight, and they won't listen to anybody about it. But yeah, troubled times in the world today. Hope that helped you understand the fight game a little bit more, the fighter's perspective, and why it is, when it seems so obvious that a UFC fighter could and should be doing something that they're not doing, that they don't. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.